Neither is General Mkhwanazi an investigator. Doesn't know anything about investigation. I don't remember him being trained as an investigator.
The recent statement by General Shadrack Sibiya has sparked another stir within South Africa's policing circles, once again bringing internal power struggles and accountability questions to the surface. In a direct and controversial remark, Sibiya declared, "We must bear in mind General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi is not an investigator. He doesn't know anything about investigation. Lieutenant Khumalo was Mkhwanazi's driver, but he is also investigating." According to Sibiya, not only is Mkhwanazi unqualified to lead investigative oversight, but his former driver is now playing a central role in probing sensitive matters that involve high-ranking police figures. This statement didn't just sound like a personal jab. It was a full-blown challenge to the credibility and competence of some of South Africa's top law enforcement officials. Behind this heated comment lies a deeper political and institutional drama. General Shadrack Sibiya, a name long associated with both high-profile investigations and serious controversy, has often found himself at the center of public scrutiny. He has faced allegations ranging from corruption to abuse of power, and his name has been mentioned in multiple reports involving irregular activities during his time in the Hawks and other law enforcement structures. The resurfacing of these issues seems to have intensified the tension between Sibiya and Mkhwanazi, who currently holds a position of authority and influence in ongoing investigative matters. When Sibiya stated that Mkhwanazi should be kicked out of committee, he didn't mince his words. He accused Mkhwanazi of overstepping his mandate and claimed that the current structure of the investigative committee is compromised because it is being run by people who are not qualified or neutral. But critics have quickly pointed out that these statements may be less about integrity and more about self-preservation. For many observers, it appears that Sibiya is attempting to divert attention away from his own alleged wrongdoing and ongoing scrutiny. To understand why this dispute carries so much weight, we need to go back to the long-standing power rivalries in South African policing institutions. Over the years, there has been a pattern of internal sabotage, political interference, and factionalism within the police leadership. Figures like Sibiya, Mkhwanazi, and others have risen and fallen in these cycles of political power and investigation. The public has seen moments where one general accuses another, followed by counter-allegations, leaks, and public confrontations, all of which erode the credibility of law enforcement. Sibiya's criticism of Mkhwanazi isn't just an isolated feud. It taps into the ongoing debate about professionalism and integrity in South Africa's security agencies. Mkhwanazi, who has served as the KwaZulu-Natal Police Commissioner and has had his fair share of controversies too, is viewed by some as a tough, by-the-book officer. However, his critics say that he is politically connected and too close to certain power networks that shield him from accountability. On the other hand, Sibiya's track record has been marred by repeated accusations of misconduct, with some reports alleging that he has used his influence to manipulate investigations for personal or political benefit. The tension escalated after Mkhwanazi's committee reportedly began looking into activities that could implicate Sibiya or his associates. That's when the verbal attacks began to intensify. Sibiya accused the committee of bias, questioned their competence, and publicly undermined Mkhwanazi's leadership. In what seemed to be a desperate move, he claimed that the entire process is a setup designed to tarnish his name and silence him from revealing what he calls the truth behind the scenes. But as analysts point out, this is a familiar strategy used by embattled officials. When investigations get too close, the first defense is to discredit the investigators by calling Mkhwanazi inexperienced and unfit. Sibiya may be hoping to plant doubt in the public mind, thereby weakening the credibility of any findings that could expose him. Yet, his comment about Lieutenant Khumalo being a driver-turned-investigator added an almost mocking tone, suggesting that the system has lost professionalism and that personal loyalty, rather than skill, determines who gets to handle sensitive cases. Public reaction has been mixed. Some of Sibiya's supporters believe he is being targeted by a corrupt establishment that fears what he might reveal. They argue that the system often turns against those who once knew too much or played a role in exposing deep-seated rot. But others say this is simply another example of powerful men using distraction and personal attacks to avoid accountability. They point to the timing of Sibiya's statements, right when pressure mounts on him, as evidence that he is trying to cover his tracks and divert the spotlight from his own activities. Observers note that this kind of infighting between top police officials damages public confidence in law enforcement. Ordinary citizens watching these back-and-forth accusations are left wondering who they can actually trust. When generals are fighting generals, it creates the impression that the system is not built to serve justice, but to protect personal interests and political factions. The more these internal wars play out in public, the harder it becomes to believe that investigations are being conducted fairly or that the outcomes will be based on truth. Another troubling aspect is the way such conflicts paralyze institutional progress. When leadership is divided and officials spend time attacking one another, the real issues, crime, corruption, and public safety, remain unsolved. It becomes a battle of personalities instead of a fight for justice. The entire country ends up suffering when energy that should go into investigating organized crime, fraud, and corruption is wasted on personal feuds and power struggles. Some experts have suggested that an independent oversight body, separate from both Sibiya and Mkhwanazi circles, should step in to evaluate the situation. Without a neutral hand, it's unlikely the public will ever get a clear picture of who is telling the truth. Both sides have motives, and both sides have histories that raise questions. But one thing is clear: the credibility of South Africa's investigative institutions is on the line. If Sibiya truly believes Mkhwanazi is unqualified, he could have chosen formal channels to raise his concerns rather than making explosive statements to the media. Going public in such a dramatic way suggests that this is about more than procedure. It's about perception, influence, and control over the narrative. At the same time, if Mkhwanazi's camp is indeed pursuing cases that are politically motivated, that too should be exposed and stopped. Transparency and accountability must apply to everyone equally, regardless of rank or reputation. As this saga unfolds, the future remains uncertain. Will this feud lead to yet another shakeup in leadership? Will it open the door for deeper reforms in policing, or will it simply fade away like so many controversies before it? What South Africans need now is truth, integrity, and return professionalism in law enforcement. Until that happens, these cycles of accusation and denial will continue to weaken public faith and make justice look like a moving target. At the end of the day, the fight between Sibiya and Mkhwanazi is more than a clash of egos. It is a reflection of a broken system where accountability depends on who you know, not what you've done. Whether Sibiya's comments are a desperate act to protect himself or a genuine concern about corruption, one thing is certain: the public deserves transparency. And if he is truly trying to cover his crimes, then justice must follow the evidence, not the noise. Thank you for watching. What do you think about Sibiya's statement? Do you believe he is being unfairly targeted, or is this just an attempt to avoid accountability? Let us know your thoughts in the comment below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more updates and detailed political analysis on South Africa's unfolding stories.